Hi, today is December 24th, 2024. We will talk about conditional statements, the if, else if, and else statement. So conditional statements allow us to execute certain pieces of code depending on some Boolean conditions. Let's first review Boolean operators. Equals, we use double equal to denote the comparison statement, and then not equals. Less than or equal to, greater than or equal to. First, the if statement. Let's take a look at this example. X is a variable which is equal to -5. Then let's write an if statement. If x is less than 0, colon, print -x. Notice that indentation will be automatically inserted in front of the second line after the colon. So let's run this. 5, right? Because x is -5, x is less than 0, we print -x, which is 5. So the if statement is very simple. You put a condition here and then colon, and then in the second line, put the statements you want to execute if the condition is true. And notice that if the condition is not true, then nothing will happen. Let's take a look at another example. X is equal to 5. So in this case, the condition is false. Consequently, we don't expect to see any output. Let's run it. So you see nothing happened, because the condition is false. So the statement will not be executed. Then let's see some notes about the if statement. So first, the if statement without indentation will raise an error. Let's see this example. This is the correct syntax. Let's intentionally remove the indentation. Then let's run it. So you see indentation error. Expected and intended block where in front of the print. Okay, you see it's marked here. Okay. So the error message is pretty intuitive and easy to understand. And if we add the indentation back, usually we use 4 spaces, and then let's run it again. Okay, so no error anymore. Secondly, if you only have one statement to execute, you can put it on the same line. So A is equal to 12, B is equal to 6. Okay. And if A is greater than B, print A is greater than B. So there is only one statement to execute. In this case, to save space, we can put them in the same line. Of course, in this case, we don't need to have any indentation. Let's execute it. The second statement is else if. In Python, it is ELIF, a shortcut of else if. So this keyword means if the previous conditions were not true, then try this condition. So if other conditions above the current statement were false, then try the following condition. Let's see one example. So A is equal to 12, B is equal to 12, and if A is less than B, print A is less than B. Else if A is equal to B, print A is equal to B. So notice that if A is less than B is false, then check if A is equal to B or not. If it is true, print it. And if A is greater than B, for example, then nothing will happen, right? So in our example, A apparently is equal to B. So this statement will be executed. Okay, let's check it. Okay, so indeed, A is equal to B. So that is how else if works. If the previous condition is not true, then check this condition. And if it is true, execute the following statement. The last statement is else statement. So the else keyword catches anything which isn't caught by the preceding conditions. Sometimes we only need a pair of if and else statements if there is only one condition. For example, x is equal to -3, and we just want to check if x is negative or not. If it is negative, then y is equal to negative x, else y is equal to x. In other words, y is the absolute value of x. Okay. So print the absolute value of x is y. Okay, let's see how it works. Okay, since x is negative, so this condition is true. So y is equal to negative x, which is 3. Then print the absolute value of negative 3 is 3. Sometimes we need to use all of them at the same time. Let's see the next example. We first import the NumPy package as np and let x be the pi constant. Let's see this conditional flow. If x is equal to 0, print x is equal to 0. Else if x is greater than 0, print x is positive. Else x is negative. So in this example, it's very obvious that the else statement will collect all the cases that do not satisfy the previous conditions. So let's run this conditional flow. Pi is positive. Okay. So the second case is true. X is greater than 0. Now let's take a look at compound conditions. Sometimes you have 2 or more conditions in the if statement or the else if statement. Let's first briefly review the 3 Boolean operators we learned before. We can use these operators to connect or combine conditions. First, AND. Condition A and B is true if both A and B are true. Okay, so only true and true will yield the true. Or A or B is true if either A or B is true, or both A and B are true. So in other words, at least one of A and B is true. Lastly, not A is true if A is false. Okay, so this is a negation. Let's see some examples. First, the AND operator. So we define 3 variables. A is 200, B is 33, and C is 500. Okay. We will check 2 conditions. A is greater than B, and C is greater than A. Okay. Apparently, both of these 2 conditions are true. Okay. So if these 2 are both true, then print both conditions are true. Otherwise, at least one condition is false. So let's run this. Okay. Both conditions are true because we know A is greater than B, and also C is greater than B. So both of them yield true. So true and true will yield true. Okay. Then let's take a look at OR. Okay. Still, we define 3 variables, A, B, and C, with the same values. And then we check if A is greater than B or A is greater than C. If one of them is true, then we print at least one of the conditions is true. Otherwise, we print both conditions are false. The combination of 2 conditions have 4 cases. True and true, true and false, false and true, and false. Right? Only the last case, false and false, will yield a false if we use OR to combine 2 conditions. That's why both conditions are false is the only case that this is false. Let's move on to not. So A is equal to 33, B is equal to 66. Then if not A is greater than B, print A is not greater than B. Else A is greater than B. So the not operator will negate the condition. In this case, A is less than B, right? So A is greater than B will yield a false. Then not this will yield a true. Consequently, this one will be executed. Okay. Otherwise, print A is greater than B. Let's run the cell. Okay. So A is not greater than B, which is true. Next, let's see raise errors. Sometimes, even if we considered all of the cases for the conditions, there might be some errors because maybe the type of the data is completely wrong. For example, we want to check if a variable is positive, negative, or 0, but there is a condition x is numeric. What if x is actually a character string? Then none of the conditions will work. In this case, we will add one more case where the data type is not correct. We will raise some value error. So Python allows us to raise value error using the raise statement. Okay, so for example, x is equal to hello is a character string. And we first check if the type of x is not in integer or float. So together, this includes all of the real numbers. If x is not numeric, then raise the value error. X must be a real number. And if this is not the case, that means x is a number, then we can go ahead and check the conditions equal to 0, greater than 0, and else, which is less than 0. So now let's run this. Because x is not numeric, we see this value error. X must be a real number. Lastly, let's briefly talk about defining a simple function. I will create a video for defining functions later. But for now, let's just define a simple function because conditional statement is a building block of self-defined functions. So let's just try it first. Okay. So we define a function to return the absolute value of the input. To define a function, we just need to call the def function and then give a name to the self-defined function. Let's call it absval, which stands for absolute value. And there is only one input for the function. And then we just put the conditional flow in the function. All right, let's define this function. It works. And immediately we can call this function. For example, we want to calculate the absolute value of -7. Then we can run it. 7, right? Next, let's check if we enter a letter A, what will happen? So a value error will be raised. X must be a real number. Alright, that's all for this video. Next time, we will talk about Python loops, for loops, and while loops. And if you think this video is helpful, please like it and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.